The Lord be with you. A reading from the second gospel, the second chapter of the Holy Gospel according to John. Since the Passover of the Jews was near, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple area those who sold oxen, sheep, and doves, as well as the money changers seated there. He made a whip out of cords and drove them all out of the temple area with the sheep and oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who sold doves, he said, "Take these out of here and stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples recalled the words of Scripture, "Zeal for your house will consume me." At this the Jews answered and said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and you will raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking about the temple of his body. Therefore, when he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they came to believe the Scripture and the word Jesus had spoken. While he was in Jerusalem for the feast of Passover, many began to believe in his name when they saw the signs he was doing. But Jesus would not trust himself to them because he knew them all and did not need anyone to testify about human nature. He himself understood it well. The Gospel of the Lord. So you don't like Lent this year? Does anyone? That's how I decided to start my reflection for this homily this weekend. What is there about Lent to like? I mean, we're reminded about the 10 Commandments. That's no fun. We're reminded about how we should act and how we shouldn't act. Doing things religiously. Once again, I don't need any more reminders. I got all of that when I was 5 years old. Then there's that fasting and praying and almsgiving. Is someone keeping notes about how I'm doing for Lent? And then today we hear about the 10 Commandments. And then we hear about Jesus Christ getting angry and overturning the tables, making a whip out of cords, and he must have been really angry. Maybe a little out of character for how we expect Jesus. So today's scripture, God and Lent, don't come across very inviting. But after all, Lent is a time for letting God get our attention. And if God gets our attention, we will hear about the holiness of God. We will hear about the holiness of all life, and especially holiness about ourselves that we are called. What's not to like about Lent if it's God trying to get my attention? And we do have a attention getter in this gospel. Here we have the mild-mannered Jesus who had been preaching and healing, saying all of these wonderful things, coming into the temple, and he must have been flushed with anger. After all, there were people in there like bankers, and they were exchanging lira, Roman coin, for shekels, because you had to buy those animals with Jewish coin. And trust me, they were getting 20 to 50% on their dollar. That was merchandising in the house of God. And to have all this game in there, doves and who knows what else being sold, that just raised his shackles. He couldn't take it anymore. And he blew a gasket. Why did he get so angry? It was all about justice and reverence. His father, our father, deserved much better. And so it was very appropriate for Jesus to get very angry. He got their attention. He drove them out, spilled coins everywhere. What a sight that must have been. And the disciples just looked on. It's very dramatic. And then soon afterwards, Jesus is seen outside the temple area, preaching and calm, at peace, healing, full of charity. It gives us an idea that there is such a thing as righteous, just anger, letting your passion spill over, practicing what you preach, and then go back to that level of peace we should have. I came across a story that relates to apartheid in South Africa. It's something that had been going on there for over 60 years, until about the mid-90s. There's still some fallout from it, not unlike our civil rights movement and segregation in our country, especially in the South. There was a government plan, and you had to follow the order. There will be white schools and there will be black schools, and they will never mix. There was a headmaster at a white school. His name was Robert Mansfield. He was quite the cricket player, and so he decided to be the coach of the cricket team of this white school. But he wanted to play all schools, and he lined up a game with a black school. The government ordered no can do. And so he had a very august position to be a headmaster at a white school in South Africa, paid well. It had a great reputation. He was one of the elitists. And so what did he do? He just resigned. He would not back down from his desire to have his young people play a game of cricket, a simple game of cricket, with a squad of black South Africans. It made the news in South Africa. He made a lot of enemies with those who were in favor of apartheid. And one day, a man by the name of Emmanuel Nene, a leader of the black school system, came to talk to him. He said, "I've come to see a man who resigns his job because he does not wish to obey an order that will prevent the children of his school from playing against the children of Mr. Nyapo's school." Emmanuel said, "I want to see what this man looks like. We are not used to seeing such people." So Mr. Mansfield responds, "It's not quite true. I resigned because of that order. I resigned because I think it's time to go out and fight everything that separates people from one another, and especially people of one color and of one race from people of another color and race." Emmanuel said, "But you're going to feel the wounds of that decision." He lost a lot of friends. He couldn't get another job. He couldn't support his family. He was an outcast in the apartheid white community. So he simply said, "I know I'm going to be wounded for some time, but I don't worry about my wounds," Mr. Mansfield said. "When I go up there, which is my intention, The big guy, the big judge, will say to me, "Where are your wounds?" And if I say, "I haven't any," he will say, "Was there nothing worth fighting for?" And Mr. Mansfield said, "I couldn't face that question from God." Was there nothing worth fighting for? Lent, let's get back to Lent. Lent is all about getting our attention. It's time for being wounded a little bit. We even wound ourselves with prayers, fasting, almsgiving. We pay attention. It's a new paradigm, 40 days of Lent. We not only go into the desert with Jesus Christ to find out what's it all about, but we also go with Jesus Christ into his agony in the garden, where his wounds begin. In our Stations of the Cross, we begin to join also in the wounds of the way of the cross, from scourging to crucifixion. Lent, yes, is a time for woundedness because we're going through this with Jesus, and Jesus is guiding our way. This time of woundedness, this Lent, it's an important one because it transforms all of our other days. At least it should. It washes away the grit and grime of hopelessness and despair, and enables us to see our lives filled with hope because we know what ends after the 14th station. There's a resurrection. For those who are wounded, woundedness, sacrifice is essential for resurrection. So if God were to ask us, was there nothing worth fighting for if we don't show any wounds? It's time for us to take a good look and get very angry. A righteous anger, an appropriate anger. So what is there to fight for, to get angry about, to get passionate about? To save children and young adults from human trafficking? Continuing to fight racism in all of its manner in our society? Working to feed the hungry and the alienated? Demanding religious liberty? Very much in the news these days. Protecting life from the womb to the tomb? And keep asking ourselves, was there nothing worth fighting for? Where are your wounds? To address the injustices of every kind in our world, which means becoming informed and articulate in expressing our passion, our anger as disciples of Christ. So may we remember the words of Robert Mansfield of almost 20 years ago, when our time for accountability comes. Am I going to be wounded? Don't worry about the wounds. When I go up there, which is my intention, will the big judge say to me, "Where are your wounds?" And if I say and show I have none, will he say, "Was there nothing to fight for?" Along with Robert Mansfield, we could well respond, "I couldn't face that question